I'll respectfully listen and try to come up with questions to try to help better understand it. Or maybe even to try to challenge the topic, even if it's something I agree on. Um, I usually time it for 5 minutes, though usually people end up wanting to stay after, but it's totally up to you. Sound like something you'd be up for?
Okay.
Okay. And what was your first name?
Allison.
Allison? I'm Nathan.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Is there a particular claim you want to talk about? Something you think is true? Nothing in particular?
No.
Kind of nervous? If you want, we can. I've got a little kind of thought experiment game kind of that we can do while you think.
Okay.
Okay. I don't think I have it here with me actually. It is in my trunk. I've got a little container of Tic Tacs. Would you agree that inside my little container of Tic Tacs, that the number of whole Tic Tacs in the container is either even or odd?
Yes.
Okay. Is it possible for it to be both even and odd?
No.
It's not possible for it to be both even and odd. So if we had two people here and one of them said it's even, the other one said it's odd, it's not possible for them both to be right, is it?
That would be correct.
Okay, it's not possible for them both to be right. That's it. That's the game. Do you have an idea about what you want to talk about?
No.
No. You can think for a minute. Something you think is true.
I think for the most part vaccines work.
You think for the most part vaccines work. Okay.
I've never had one not work on me.
Never had one not work on you. Okay. So when we say that for the most part vaccines work,
Yeah. I mean, like, I've heard of people who get the flu shot and then they get the flu. That's never happened to me.
that's never happened to you?
No.
Okay. So when you say that a vaccine works, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think a vaccine, generally the vaccine keeps you from getting the illness. But I guess with the COVID vaccine, the way it works is it keeps you from having such severe symptoms.
Okay.
So you still could get the illness, but your symptoms wouldn't be as severe.
So if we were to rephrase your topic like a I am convinced statement, it might sound something like, I am convinced that for the most part, vaccines keep you from getting the disease they're designed to keep you from getting.
Yes.
Okay. With exception to some that are just like prevent you from getting the symptoms as opposed to the disease.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to write that on a sticky note.
Okay.
I'm going to make sure that I understand the thing that you're saying.
Oh, great. That
And-
means you're going to try to trip me up.
No, I'm not going to try to trip you up. No, this really is like you could think of yourself as like the teacher and I'm the student. I'm trying to ask questions to just try and get a better handle on the thing that it is you think is true. I'm going to repeat back a lot of the things you say to make sure my understanding is correct, and you just like say, yes, that's correct, or no, that's not correct, what I really mean is this, that kind of thing. So if we were to ask the question, do you think that vaccines work, that vaccines prevent you from getting the disease, you would say,
Yes.
okay. I'll put this little sticky note here. Vaccines generally work. They keep you from getting the disease they're designed to prevent you from getting.
Yeah.
Another thing that's really helpful for me to kind of get a handle on is how confident you are that this belief is true. So I'm going to ask you to rate your confidence on a scale from 0 to 100,
Okay.
where 100% means I never have any doubts, I never have any questions, it is not possible I could be mistaken. And 0% means I'm not sure, I don't have enough information to know one way or the other, I really don't know whether or not this is true.
Oh. Let's go with 90.
You think 90% confident?
Yeah.
Okay.
I could be mistaken.
You could be mistaken.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
That's probably
I'm not a scientist.
an honest approach to take. You could be mistaken. Okay.
Yeah.
If we were to make a pie chart of all the reasons why you're convinced this is true, that vaccines prevent you from getting a disease, which of those reasons do you think would stand out as the biggest pieces on the pie chart?
Oh, I don't know. I think just scientific data.
Scientific consensus. You hear a lot of scientists say vaccines work.
Well,
Is that accurate?
yeah, and the fact that these diseases, for the most part, have been eradicated.
And the diseases have been wiped out. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe more important to your 90% confidence is
Data.
data. So
Yeah, actual data
actual data
from reliable sources.
from reliable sources. Okay. So you've heard from reliable sources that vaccines work.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
If you hadn't heard from reliable sources that vaccines work, or if these sources were saying vaccines don't work, would you still be convinced? How would that affect your confidence?
Yeah, I would still be convinced because when my children were young, my mother was a pediatric nurse, and she made sure that I knew to get my children vaccinated.
Okay. So you'd still be convinced even if you hadn't heard like scientists saying it works.
Yeah, because my mama would have told me.
Your mama would have told you. Okay.
Yes, and she was a pediatric nurse.
How do you think your confidence would be affected if you hadn't heard from scientists, but you still had your mom in there telling you?
I don't know. My mom's been a pretty big influence on me.
Your mom's been a pretty big influence on you.
Yeah. I think even without the data backing her up, I still would have had to get vaccinated.
Okay. So would you say that your main reason, or maybe the reason on that pie chart that contributes the most to your 90% confidence is your mother or your upbringing?
No.
No, you wouldn't say that?
No.
Okay.
I would definitely go with the data.
Okay. So the data is still the biggest part.
Data's still the biggest part.
But you would still be convinced even if you didn't have the data.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
My next few questions are about how important you think it is to try to believe things that are true. First question, do you think it's important to try to believe things that are true? Does it matter to you whether your beliefs are true?
It does.
It does. So we ask, it does matter to you whether or not your beliefs are true.
Yeah.
If this belief were not true, if vaccines did not prevent you from getting a disease, is that something you'd want to know about?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you were wrong, you'd want to know about it.
Yeah, if I were wrong, I'd want to know about it.
If you were wrong, is this something that you could know about? If it were not true, is there some way to know that?
I suppose so, if you follow the data.
If you follow the data.
But, I mean, as a layperson, would I have access to the data to follow it?
Okay, so there's the question of, do I have access to the information I need? So imagine you did have that access.
Okay.
Are you saying, I want to make sure I understand this, are you saying that if there was a study performed where they vaccinated 100 people and none of those people were prevented from getting the disease, they all got the disease, or just a significant number of them got the disease, would that be enough to disprove it in your mind?
No, because I mean there could be a different reason, maybe an underlying genetic reason that the other people didn't get it.
Okay, so even with that kind of data, it wouldn't disprove it?
I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. So we think there might be a way to know whether or not it was false. So if it's false, there's a way to know about it.
Yeah. But if I'm wrong about the Tic Tacs, I could just eat one, and then we could have that problem resolved.
If you were wrong, you want to know about it. And if you were wrong, we think there is a way to know about it. How important do you think it is to be able to test your beliefs and figure out whether or not they're true?
I guess on some things it's more important than other things.
On some things, it's more important than other things. So,
Like, it's really important when you're going around a steep curve and they've got the suggested speed limit like you should only go 35 miles around this corner. Somebody at the transportation department has tested that and determined that 35 miles is a safe miles per hour to take that curve at.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, you could probably be okay at 36 or 37, but you're probably not going to be okay at 50.
Okay. So that might be an example where it's really important to be able to know whether or not this thing is true. And there are probably other examples where it's not as important. Like we talked about the Tic Tacs. Whether it's odd or even really isn't that important.
No, because then I could just eat one, and then one of us would be right.
Okay. If you were holding on to a belief, if you had a belief that you thought was true and you didn't have a way to test, if you were holding on to a belief where there was no way to test it, how would you feel about that? Would that bother you, not being able to test it?
Probably not.
It probably wouldn't bother you not being able to test it, even on one of those more important beliefs like driving around the curve.
Well, I don't know. I guess it depends on what kind of belief, and does this belief make me happy or not happy?
Okay, so the happiness of how happy a belief makes you is important to how important you think it is to test it.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you had, so an example, if you were sincerely, genuinely convinced that you were quite wealthy, that you have $1 million in the bank, but in reality that wasn't true, would you want to know about it?
Yeah, I'd want to know about that.
Okay, so even though the belief might make you happy or give you some comfort or security, you'd still want to know if you were wrong.
Oh yeah, I definitely want to know if I were wrong.
Okay. And if the shoe were on the other foot, if you thought you were poor, but in reality you were quite wealthy and you just didn't know it, would you want to know that too?
Yes, I would.
Okay. So no matter how happy it made you, if you were wrong, you want to know about it.
Yeah.
Do you think that if you have a belief that keeps you happy, and maybe it's not hurting anybody, there's no harm coming from it, and it keeps you happy, if it were false, what do you think a person should do with that belief?
Well, who's going to tell me it's false? And how do they know it's false?
Well, let's say no one's going to tell you it's false, but if it were false, would you want to know about it? Like with the bank account.
Oh.
So you were saying, when it came to the bank account, if you were wrong, you wanted to know about it, even though thinking that you were rich probably made you pretty happy. If you had a belief that wasn't hurting anyone, because like thinking you're rich when you're not, that can hurt you probably, right?
Yeah, that could.
Okay. If there's a belief that isn't hurting anyone and it makes you happy, but it's not true and you just didn't know it, is that something you'd want to know?
Yeah. Okay, because if I thought I was like extremely destitute and it turns out I wasn't, I would still want to know that because destitution can cause lots of unhappiness.
So I want to try and clarify this again. You have a belief that keeps you happy, and you believing it doesn't hurt anyone. If that belief that keeps you happy wasn't true, would you want to know about it?
No, like I really think the dog likes me, but if it turns out he really doesn't, I don't really want to know that.
You don't really want to know that?
No, it makes me happy to think he likes me.
Okay. That's really interesting. So, so you are convinced the dog likes you or has affection for you, and if you were wrong,
he's always pretty happy to see me every day.
Okay. Is it possible for a belief that isn't hurting anyone and keeps you happy, is there still a downside to believing that thing, even if it doesn't hurt anyone?
Huh. I don't know.
What could be a downside to believing something that isn't true, even if it's not hurting anyone?
Well, they say ignorance is bliss, so there might not be a downside to that one.
What do you think a person who values truth would say?
That person would probably want to know.
That person would probably want to know?
Yeah. I guess I'm not valuing truth as much.
Okay. Do you think you would want to value truth more?
Huh. Yeah. I guess.
You guess you would want to value truth more? It's not like a right or wrong answer or anything. I'm just
Okay, well, I would like to value truth tempered with kindness.
truth tempered with kindness. If the truth were unkind, or the truth were sad or discomforting, would you still want to know about it?
Yeah, yeah, like if I were really stinky, I would really want to know about it. And so stinky I couldn't smell myself, and nobody can stand to be around me. I would really want to know that.
To go back to the vaccines, we're convinced that vaccines prevent diseases. You said if you were wrong, you wanted to know about it. If you were wrong, there's probably a way to know about it. And your biggest reason was scientific data.
Yeah.
Is there a specific source from that data?
What do you mean?
Well, you said earlier it comes from reliable sources, that there's some data. Is there a specific set of data you have in mind?
Yeah, like maybe the CDCP, or that's just in America. Maybe there's other organizations around the world that have their own CDCs.
Okay. If the CDC said tomorrow that vaccines don't work, would that make it true?
I don't know. I guess it would depend on how much turnover they've had recently, and I would kind of look at that for them to be suddenly saying that vaccines don't work.
Okay, so we'd look deeper to see if there were other factors.
Yeah.
If a source you trusted, you wouldn't trust them implicitly. You would like see what's going on, why are they saying this?
Right.
Okay. Do you think it's important to have reliable ways to know whether something is true as your reason for thinking that something's true?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Wow,
Okay.
this is really interesting. Okay. So, if you were to think of we call it kind of your main reason, your biggest piece of the pie chart, scientific data. If we were to think, I asked you earlier whether or not you think it's important to be able to test a belief. You said, yeah, it's probably pretty important. You think this belief is one that's important to test?
About vaccines.
About vaccines. That vaccines work. That's important to
Yeah.
test. Okay. What kinds of tests? My next question is really about what kinds of tests do you think are good tests? A good test should probably be able to tell you whether or not something is true. Do you think a good test should also be able to tell you whether or not something's false?
Yes.
Okay. If you were to think of a good test or a reliable reason we talked about as a kind of truth filter that maybe keeps out false claims and only lets through true claims, do you think scientific data from the CDC would be a filter?
No, I don't think you should use that as the only filter.
You don't think you should use the only filter? You should have more filters?
Yeah. I think there should be more than one reliable source.
You should have more than one reliable filter like that.
Yeah.
The question was, would this qualify as a reliable filter?
I think it would.
It keeps out false claims and only lets through true claims?
Yeah, I don't know, because sometimes information comes.
Sometimes you hear something from a reliable source that may not be true?
Yeah, and then they don't know that they're saying something that's not true until later.
Okay. So I'm going to like try to boil it down. It may be an oversimplification. Don't take it as a dig at you. I heard it from the CDC. Is that a good filter? If we were to think of a good filter as something that only lets through true claims.
I don't know. I heard it on NPR.
You heard it on that? Oh, okay.
How about that?
So it's not so much directly from the CDC. It's more that you heard it on NPR, who was reporting on what the CDC
But
said.
they had a person from the CDC.
Okay, they had a person from the CDC on NPR who you heard this from. Okay.
Yeah. So how about that? Right.
Is that a reliable way to know whether something is true? Not saying that it's false, but is this a reliable way to know whether something is true?
I think so, because sometimes it inspires me to dig deeper.
It inspires you to dig deeper?
Yeah.
Okay. So you wouldn't ever take just their word for it, but it's still probably your biggest chunk of the pie chart.
Correct.
Okay. What do you think a person, I'm not saying that your belief is not justified, but if a person has a belief that they're not justified in, or where their confidence really isn't supported by their reasons that they have, say they had an unreliable reason, what do you think a person who isn't justified in their belief should do with those beliefs?
Well, they don't have to do anything with them.
They don't have to do anything with them. What should a person who values truth do with a belief that there may not be justified in holding?
Investigate.
They should investigate. So a person who isn't justified in their beliefs should investigate. Do you think they should hold on to the belief if they investigate and discover that their reasons are not good enough to support the confidence that they have? Or should they let go of their belief? Or
I guess it depends on how they feel about letting go of that belief.
it would depend on how they feel about letting go of that belief. Could you be more specific?
Is it going to harm them? Is it going to cause a paradigm shift?
A paradigm shift. So, like, how important the belief is to you, or how close the belief is to you. Would you say that's, or am I putting words in your mouth?
I think you're putting words in my mouth.
Okay. So, if letting go of a belief could cause harm to somebody, you think they
Then
probably
they should
shouldn't
just
let
keep
go of
it.
it,
Yeah.
even if it may not be true?
Yeah.
What would a person who values truth say, you think?
They'd probably say I don't value truth as much as I think I do.
Do you want to value truth more?
I've had truth. I think I value kindness more now.
You value kindness more than truth? That's interesting. That's really interesting. Okay. That's all the main questions I have. I've got a couple more questions and then we can wrap it up.
Okay.
First question, did you feel disrespected over the course of this conversation?
No.
Okay. Did you feel personally attacked over the course of this conversation?
No, but I felt like you were probing.
Felt like I was probing a little bit?
Yes.
That is kind of the nature of these questions. I'm going to dig.
Okay.
You could think of me as like a foundation inspector. I'm here to like see, is this house safe to live in? Is this belief like worth holding?
Yeah.
If I'm a person who values truth.
Okay.
Last question. If like we were to meet again and you remember this conversation, would you feel comfortable continuing this conversation or maybe starting up another one like it? Or would you say, no, I don't really want to do any of that. I didn't like this one.
I would start the conversation up again. Or
Okay.
continue.
Okay.